You know how it is when you're like trying to get the hang of something new?
Hmm.
Whether it's, I don't know, playing guitar or even just putting together that IKEA furniture,
Oh, yeah. That,
there are always those gets where things just don't quite click. And learning English, oh, it's definitely one of those things.
it really is. It's a fascinating journey, but yeah, bumps are inevitable.
Totally. But here's the thing, I always think those stumbles, they're not really like failures, are they? They feel more like little signs, pointing us where we need to maybe focus a bit more.
That's a great way to put it. It really is like troubleshooting, isn't it? If
Yeah.
something's not working right, you don't just bin the whole thing.
Exactly.
You look closely, you figure out what went wrong, maybe adjust things, and try again with that new info.
Hmm.
Language learning is fundamentally the same kind of process. Those mistakes are just really valuable feedback.
Right. Feedback helping you fine tune. And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today. A topic I think is super helpful for, well, anyone navigating English. The common mistakes learners tend to make.
A very worthwhile topic.
Yeah, and we've got some great source material to guide us. We have the Learner's Compass, navigating common mistakes in English and charting a course to fluency. That's kind of our main roadmap.
Mm-hmm. Sounds comprehensive.
Then there's the Learner's Compass, English Fluency Study Guide, which has got some really practical exercises and takeaways.
Good. Practical stuff is key.
And a briefing document sort of pulling the main ideas together. So our mission, if you like, for this deep dive, we want to be your linguistic compass.
Nice.
Help you spot those common pitfalls, understand why they happen, because knowing the why makes such a difference, right?
Absolutely. Understanding the root cause is half the battle.
And then equip you with strategies to navigate towards fluency, hopefully with more confidence and less frustration. Save you some time, prevent that feeling of being totally overwhelmed. We're zoning in on the really typical challenges.
And it is fascinating, how often the same challenges pop up for learners from all sorts of different language backgrounds.
Yeah.
It really tells you something about English itself, I think. By knowing these common hurdles, you can be much more, well, strategic about your learning. Put your energy where it counts most.
Okay, let's dive in then. The Learner's Compass starts us off with what it calls grammatical minefields. Sounds ominous.
Huh. Well, maybe a little dramatic, but grammar can feel like that sometimes.
So in your experience looking at the guide too, where do learners most often get tripped up with grammar?
Unsurprisingly, verb tense confusion is right up there. Big time. The guide highlights a few key pairings that are constant trouble spots.
Like.
Okay, so simple present versus present continuous. You might hear someone say, I'm usually playing football on Sundays.
Right, instead of I usually play because it's a habit.
Exactly. Or the other way around, like, look, he plays the piano. When what they mean is it's happening right now.
So they should say he is playing the piano.
Precisely. The action is in progress at the moment of speaking.
And the guide mentions why this happens, right? Something about the continuous aspect not being the same in all languages. Or overgeneralizing.
That's a big part of it, yeah. Some languages just don't mark that ongoing aspect in the same explicit way English does. Or they might use a similar form, but, with slightly different rules. So learners kind of default to one form.
Okay, so what are some really clear ways to keep them straight, to avoid those slips?
The key thing is to think, is this happening right now, or is it a regular thing, a habit, a general truth? That duration and frequency idea?
Habit versus happening now. Got it.
Yeah. And pay attention to those little time words. Usually, always, often, they strongly suggest simple present. Now, at the moment, look. Those point towards present continuous.
Makes sense.
And a really good strategy, I think, is to consciously make sentences about your own habits versus what you're doing right now. That personal connection really helps it stick.
Okay, that's helpful. Habit versus happening now. So another tricky tense pair the guide mentions is simple past versus present perfect. I definitely hear things like, I have visited Italy last year.
Oh, constantly. Or she didn't finish her work yet.
Right. So what's the core issue there? Why the mix-up?
Okay, so in I have visited Italy last year, the phrase last year pins it to a specific finish time in the past.
So it needs the simple past. I visited Italy last year.
Exactly. The present perfect implies some kind of connection to the present, which last year cancels out. And in she didn't finish her work yet.
The yet implies it's still relevant now, right?
Precisely. The work is still unfinished. So that connection to the present calls for the present perfect negative. She hasn't finished her work yet. The big reason, as the guide points out, is that many languages just don't have this specific present relevance concept built into their grammar in the same way.
Ah, okay. That present relevance idea is key then. So for learners trying to, get a better handle on this, what are the main signals for each tense?
Well, the guy gives some good rules of thumb. If you say, when yesterday, last week, in 2010, use the simple past. Simple as that, usually.
Okay. Specific time, simple past.
Right. Present perfect is more for experiences at some unspecified pastime, like have you ever been to? Or for recent actions with a result now, I've lost my keys. You feel the result now.
Right, you can't get in your house.
Exactly. And also for actions that started in the past and are still going on, often with for or since.
Okay.
Looking out for keywords helps too. Ago, last.
Yeah.
Often signal simple past. Ever, never, yet, already, since, for. Often point to present perfect. And again, contrasting your own life helps. I went to the cinema last night versus I have seen that film before.
Specific event versus general experience. Got it. And then there's the past perfect. The guide says learners sometimes just avoid it.
Yeah, they often do. It feels like an extra complication, maybe. the past perfect that's had plus the past participle, like had left, it has a very specific job.
Which is?
To show that one past action finished before another past action started.
Sequence. Okay. Like the example, when I arrived, the train left versus when I arrived, the train had left.
Exactly. In the first one, maybe the train left as you arrived or just after, but had left makes it crystal clear. Train, gone before arrival.
So it avoids ambiguity about the sequence. Why do learners shy away from it, do you think, besides complexity?
Well, partly complexity. And maybe their first language handles sequencing differently without needing a dedicated tense like this, so it doesn't feel natural to them.
So remembering that earlier past idea is crucial. How can we make that concept, really sink in?
Timelines. Seriously, drawing a quick timeline when you're talking about past events can really help visualize it. Event A happened, then event B happened. The had plus past participle goes with event A.
Visualizing the sequence. I like that.
Yeah, and storytelling is great practice. Consciously try to tell a short story where you need the past perfect to make the order clear. I went to the shop, but it had already closed.
Right? Makes the reason clear. Okay, moving on from tenses. Subject-verb agreement. Sounds basic, but the guide flags errors, especially with the third-person singulars, she like, he don't. Why does that little legs get dropped so often?
It's often L1 interference. Their first language might not have that kind of agreement marking on the verb, or it could just be simplification, trying to make things easier, maybe unconsciously dropping endings.
But in English, for he, she, it, or a singular noun in the present simple.
You generally need that S on the verb she likes, and the negative needs doesn't, not don't, he doesn't want.
Okay.
The key is always identifying that main subject, is it singular or plural, and making the verb match.
Right. But it gets trickier, doesn't it, when you have those phrases stuck between the subject and the verb, like the list of items are, or one of the students know.
Exactly. Those intervening phrases like of items or of the students can really throw you off. You see the plural items or students right before the verb, and your brain wants to make the verb plural too.
But the real subject is?
In the first one, it's list, singular. So the list is. In the second, it's one, also singular. So one knows.
Ah, okay. You have to look past the distracting phrase.
Precisely. Always ask, who or what is actually doing the verb? Focus on the core subject. And be super careful with structures like one of the or each of the. The subject is always singular.
So focus on the real subject. And the guide recommends proofreading specifically for this.
Absolutely. It's easy to miss in the flow of writing, so a dedicated check just for subject-verb agreement is a really good idea, especially with complex sentences.
Okay, now, articles. A, an, the, or sometimes nothing at all. The guide calls them small words, big problems. Why are these tiny words such a nightmare for learners? We see things like, I saw a dog, or I like the music in general.
Oh, articles are notoriously difficult. A huge reason is that many languages just don't have articles, or their system is completely different, so there's nothing to relate it to, leading to L1 interference.
Right.
Plus, the rules in English can feel really complex and, frankly, a bit illogical sometimes, with plenty of exceptions.
So, like in I saw a dog, the mistake is...
Dog is a singular countable noun. First time you mention it, generally needs an indefinite article, I saw a dog.
And I like the music, if you mean music generally.
Then you need the zero article, I like music. Using the implies specific music that the listener knows about.
Okay. And what about he is a best player?
Superlatives best, tallest, most interesting nearly always take the definite article, the. So he is the best player. Same if you're asking for something specific. Can you pass me the book? The one we can both see, not a book.
So it really hinges on specificity, generality, first mention. Lots to track.
It is. The core idea is often about whether the listener knows which specific thing you're talking about.
What's the best way to tackle learning articles then? It feels overwhelming.
The guide suggests focusing on one rule or one type of article at a time. Don't try to learn everything at once.
Okay.
Start with a "and." When do you use them? Singular countable nouns, first mention, non-specific. Remember "and" before vowel sounds.
Yeah.
Then moves to "the." When is it specific? Unique things, already mentioned. Then think about the zero article, general plurals, general uncountables, most proper names.
Break it down.
Yeah. And honestly, massive amounts of reading and just noticing how articles are used naturally, that exposure is invaluable. Targeted exercises help too, focusing on one rule.
Okay, focus and notice. Got it. Another set of tiny troublemakers, prepositions, in, on, at, of, for, to. The guide calls them tiny words, giant headaches, and lists errors like arrived to the airport, good on guitar, married with, discussed about, depends of. Why are these so hard?
Oh, prepositions. They're tricky mainly because their use is so often idiomatic. There's not always a clear logical reason why we say arrive at the station but arrive in London.
Right, it's not logical.
And direct translation from your first language. Often completely useless because the corresponding words just don't work the same way. Plus, so many verbs and adjectives demand specific preposition partners collocations. We listen to, depend on, good at.
You just have to learn the specific pair.
Pretty much. The meaning is often in the combination, not just the individual words.
So what's the strategy then if logic and translation don't help much?
Learn them in chunks. Don't just learn arrive at a place, arrive in a city, country. Keep a dedicated notebook section for verb adjective plus preposition phrases you encounter.
Okay, learn the whole phrase.
Yes, pay special attention to time and place prepositions. They're everywhere. And use collocation dictionaries. They're brilliant for showing you which words naturally go together. Focus on correcting those common wrong pairs, the guide lists. Arrive and care at, good at, listen to, depend on, married to, discuss. No preposition.
Memorize those common combos. Okay, next up. Countable versus uncountable nouns. This throws people too, right? Errors, like in advice, furnitures, informations, or using quantifiers wrong, like much books, many time.
Yeah, it's another fundamental distinction that doesn't exist in all languages in the same way.
Yeah.
The core idea is, can you count it as separate units?
Yeah.
One book, two books, three chairs. That's countable.
Yep.
Things like water, information, advice, furniture, luggage, money, something. We usually treat them as the whole, a mass, not individual items. So they're uncountable.
And that affects grammar how?
Big time. Uncountables don't usually have a plural form, not furnitures, informations. You can't use a or an with them.
Mm.
Not an advice, though. You can say a piece of advice.
Right.
And quantifiers change. Many and few go with countables. Many books, few chairs. Much and little go with uncountables. Much time, little information.
So recognizing the noun type is step one. How can learners check if they're unsure?
Good learners' dictionaries are your friend here. They'll usually mark nouns with C for countable or U for uncountable. Make it a habit to check when you learn a new word.
Check the dictionary. Good tip.
Though watch out, some nouns can be both, depending on meaning. Like hair, uncountable generally, versus a hair, one single strand, adds a bit of spice.
Always something. Okay, last grammatical minefield. Word order. The guide shows errors like adjective order, wooden biggle table, adverb placement, I go sometimes, and question structure, why, you are. What are the main English patterns here?
English word order is, relatively speaking, quite fixed compared to some other languages. Basic statements are usually subject, verb, object, SVO.
Okay.
Where learners often stumble is, like you said, adjectives. There's a preferred order, often summarized by the acronym OSES comp, opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose. So a lovely big old square brown French or writing desk.
Wow, okay. Osas comp. That's a mouthful. So big old wooden table sounds better than a wooden big old table.
Much better, yeah. Then adverbs. Frequency adverbs like, sometimes, usually, often, generally before the main verb, but after the verb to be. So I sometimes go, but I am often late.
Okay, position matters.
And questions. Direct questions usually need inversion, flip the subject and the auxiliary verb or be. Why are you asking? Not why you are asking.
Right, invert.
But in indirect questions, embedded in a statement, You keep the normal statement order. I don't know why you're asking?
Ah, okay. That's a common confusion point.
Yeah.
So direct questions invert, indirect questions don't.
Exactly. The key takeaway is that English relies quite heavily on word order for meaning. So getting the standard patterns right is pretty important for clarity.
Okay, that wraps up the grammatical minefields. Quite a lot to navigate there. Let's shift gears to vocabulary vexations. First up, false friends. What are these exactly?
False friends. These are words that look or sound very similar in English and another language, but actually have different meanings. Sneaky.
Like linguistic traps.
Totally. They can lead to some really confusing or even embarrassing moments. The guy gives some classic examples.
That's as.
Okay, for Spanish speakers, actual in Spanish means current or present day. In English, actual means real or existing, in fact. So saying the actual president, meaning the current one, is a false friend trap.
I see.
For French speakers, library is a bookstore where you buy books. In English, a library is where you borrow them. Big difference.
Definitely don't want to mix those up.
And for German speakers, sensible means sensitive. English sensible means reasonable or practical. Completely different qualities.
Wow. So surface similarity is deceptive. How do you avoid these then?
Awareness is number one. Just know that these exist, especially between related languages. And always double-check the meaning in a reliable English dictionary. If a word looks suspiciously familiar, don't assume.
Don't trust the similarity.
Exactly. Keeping a personal list of false friends for your specific language pair is also super helpful.
Good idea. Okay, next vocabulary issue. Word choice in collocations. Using the wrong synonym, wrong formality level like fabricated a cake or commence the meeting, and weird word pairs like do exercise or strong rain.
Right. This is about using words that aren't just technically correct in meaning, but also fit the context, the level of formality, and combine naturally with other words.
Okay.
So fabricated implies making something up, maybe falsely. You bake or make a cake. Commence is very formal, usually start or begin, is better for a meeting.
And using slang like kicked off the presentation might be wrong in a formal setting.
Exactly. Register matters. Then collocations, those words that just sound right together. We do or get, exercise, not make it. We take a photo, not make one. Rain is heavy, not usually strong.
It just sounds off otherwise.
It does. And these pairs often don't translate directly. You can't just swap words from your language. It shows vocabulary is more than just single words. It's about how they team up.
So how do learners get a better feel for these natural partners, this sounding rate thing?
Learn vocabulary in context, not just lists. Look at example sentences in dictionaries. Actively learn common collocations, verb plus noun, adjective plus noun pairs.
Like heavy rain, take a photo.
Yes. Use a collocation dictionary. They're designed for this. And immerse yourself. Read a lot, listen a lot. You start to absorb what sounds natural. And when writing or speaking, ask yourself, does this sound right? If unsure, look it up or ask someone.
Develop that intuition through exposure.
Okay, another issue. Overuse of simple, vague words. Relying too much on good, bad, nice, thing, get, make, do, like saying, the movie was good.
Yeah, while those words are essential, leaning on them too heavily makes your English sound, well, a bit basic. Less precise, less interesting.
So the goal is to be more descriptive.
Exactly. Why was the movie good? Was it entertaining, thrilling, thought-provoking? Hilarious. Using richer vocabulary lets you express yourself more clearly and with more nuance. It makes your communication more engaging.
So actively try to replace the vague words. How? Consciously expand your vocabulary. When you learn good, also learn synonyms like excellent, fantastic, decent, acceptable, and crucially, learn the difference in meaning and usage. Use a thesaurus, but carefully. Always check the example sentences for the synonym to make sure it fits your specific context.
Don't just swap words blindly.
Never. Context is king. The aim is more precise and vivid language.
Okay. And the last vocabulary vexation, phrasal verbs. Those verb plus preposition adverb combos like look up, give up, break down, they're notoriously tricky.
Oh, absolutely. A major headache for many learners. But they are so common in everyday spoken English. Avoiding them can make you sound quite formal or stilted.
But using them wrong is risky too, right? The guide mentions look at versus look up, gave over versus gave up. The particle changes everything.
Completely. Look at means direct your eyes. Look up can mean search for information or admire someone or improve. Give up means quit. Gave over. Oh, well, that's not really standard. Using the wrong particle can lead to total misunderstanding.
So how on earth do you learn these?
Treat each phrasal verb as a unique vocabulary item. Don't try to guess the meaning from the parts it's often idiomatic.
Learn it as one block.
Yes. Learn them in context. Note them down with example sentences. Maybe group them by verb, all the get phrasals, or by particle, all the up phrasals. Check if they're separable, turn the light on, turn on the light, or inseparable, look after someone.
Okay.
Use special phrasal verb dictionaries or sections in learners' dictionaries, and practice, practice, practice using them. That's the only way they become natural. Context and individual learning are key.
Right, context and treating them as unique items. Okay, grammar and vocabulary navigated. Now for pronunciation pitfalls. First up, difficult sounds. Things like the, arbol, different
Yeah.
vowels like ship, sheep, vol, w, silent letters. Why are these so tough?
Fundamentally, it's often because these sounds just don't exist in the learner's first language. Your mouth, tongue, lips, they're trained from childhood to make your language's sounds.
Muscle memory.
Exactly. Making new sounds requires new movements, new positions, which feel awkward at first. Plus, your brain might not even hear the difference clearly between two similar English sounds if that distinction isn't meaningful in your L1, like N and I in ship and sheep.
If you can't hear it, you can't say it easily.
Precisely. L1 interference is huge. Here, you substitute the closest sound from your own language. And things like silent letters, K in we know, B in doubt, just seem to break all the rules. It involves physical dexterity and auditory perception.
So what can learners actually do about these tricky sounds?
Several things. Using the International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA, can help understand how sounds are made if you're technically minded.
Okay.
Watching videos showing mouth positions, especially for things like de, che, be, is really useful. Practice with minimal pairs, words differing by only one sound. Thin, sin, very, berry, leave, that trains both listening and speaking.
Hear the difference, say the difference.
Yep. Record yourself. Compare it to native speakers. Use pronunciation apps. Many give feedback now. And just focus on careful listening. You have to tune your ear first. And be patient. It takes time to retrain those muscles.
Okay, patience and practice. Then there's word stress. Putting the emphasis on the right syllable, like photograph versus photographer. Why is this so important? Does it really affect understanding?
Oh, massively. Word stress in English is crucial for intelligibility. Putting the stress on the wrong syllable can make a word completely unrecognizable to a native speaker or sound like a different word altogether.
Really? That's strong.
Yes. Think about record noun versus record verb, or desert versus dessert. Stress changes the word. And unlike some languages with predictable stress, English stress can feel quite random sometimes, though there are patterns. L1 stress patterns often interfere too. Stress is fundamental to how we identify words.
Okay, so it's vital. How do learners get it right more often?
When you learn a new word with more than one syllable, learn the stress pattern with the meaning and spelling. Treat it as part of the word.
Don't just learn the letters.
Right. Good dictionaries mark the stress, usually with a little line. Listen carefully to native speakers. Where do they put the emphasis? Practice saying words aloud, maybe even exaggerate the stressed syllable at first to feel it.
Exaggerate to internalize.
Yeah. And be aware stress can shift with word forms like your photograph, photographic example. Learning common suffix patterns that affect stress helps too.
Learn stress with the word. Got it. Moving from word level to sentence level. Sentence stress and rhythm. English being stress-timed, stressing content words, reducing function words. What does it actually mean?
It means English has a kind of musical rhythm. Content words, the important ones carrying meaning like nouns, main verbs, adjectives, adverbs get stressed. They're longer, louder, maybe higher pitch.
Okay.
Function words, the grammatical glue like articles, a, the prepositions, in, at. Auxiliary verbs, is, are, have. Pronouns, he, she, it. They usually get unstressed. They're quicker, quieter, and the vowel often reduces to a weak schwa sound like the a in about.
So not every word gets equal weight.
Not at all. If a learner stresses every word equally, it sounds very unnatural, kind of robotic. And sometimes putting stress on the wrong word in a sentence can change the emphasis or even the core meaning unintentionally. It's about the rhythm, the music of the language.
How can learners start to catch this rhythm? It sounds quite subtle.
First step, learn to spot the difference between content words and function words. Then, practice saying sentences aloud, consciously emphasizing the content words, and swallowing the function words a bit.
Like turning the volume up on nouns and verbs, down on
and. Kind of, yeah. Listen intently to native speakers. How do they naturally group words and stress the important ones? Shadowing is fantastic for this, repeating right after a native speaker, trying to copy their rhythm and stress. And notice how changing stress changes meaning. I didn't say he stole the money versus I didn't say he stole the money versus I didn't say he stole the money.
Right, the emphasis shifts the focus. Okay. Related to rhythm is intonation, the melody, the rise and fall of the voice. The guide calls it the melody of meaning. Why is that important?
Intonation carries so much meaning beyond the words themselves. It tells us if it's a statement or question, expresses emotions, happy, sad, bored, excited, signals attitude, sarcastic, interested, highlights information.
Wow, doing a lot of work.
Totally. If your intonation is flat, you might sound bored or uninterested, even if you're not.
Mhm.
Or it could just make you harder to understand, did you finish your thought? Was that a question?
So what are some common English patterns?
Generally, falling intonation for statements and we questions, who, what, where, rising intonation for yes-no questions, a rise-fall pattern often for lists, I bought apples, bananas, and oranges, or showing surprise or contrast. But again, L1 patterns can interfere. The key is that intonation adds that crucial layer of emotional and grammatical meaning.
How can learners tune into this melody and practice it?
Active listening again. Pay attention to the pitch changes. Try to hear the tune of different sentence types. Practice mimicking those tunes. Exaggerating them slightly at first can help you feel the movement.
Mimic the music.
Exactly. Watch actors in movies or TV shows, they use intonation expressively. Try copying short lines. Record yourself and listen back. Does it sound flat? Does it rise and fall naturally? Shadowing helps massively here too.
Okay, listen. Mimic, exaggerate. Last pronunciation point, connected speech. How words blend together, linking, reducing, sounds disappearing. Like, what are you going to do? Becoming, what am I going to do? Why is this so tough for learners?
Because it sounds nothing like the words written down, right? Learners learn individual words, often pronounced carefully, then they hear native speakers, and it's just a blur of sound.
It really can be, yeah.
When words flow together, sounds change. The guide mentions key things. Linking, consonant end links to a vowel start, an apple, reduction, unstressed vowels become shuahai, can, for a T, elision, sings in a, once yesterday, assimilation, sounds change to be like neighbors, have to heften. It all makes speech smooth and fast for natives, but really hard to decode for learners. Spoken English is way more fluid than written English.
So how do learners start cracking this code? It sounds impossible.
Not impossible, but it takes practice. First, just be aware it happens. Know that native speakers don't pronounce every sound clearly.
Okay, awareness first.
Then, use transcripts with audio. Listen while reading. See how the written form maps, or doesn't map, onto the sounds. Notice common reductions like gotta, wanna, hafta, cuppa, cup of. Practice saying these yourself.
Get used to the common shortcuts.
Yeah. And shadowing again. It forces your mouth and ears to deal with speech at natural speed with all the connections and reductions included. It's probably the single best technique for this.
Shadowing seems key for a lot of pronunciation stuff. Okay, that's pronunciation covered. Let's look at listening lapses. Some common issues are trying to understand every word, struggling with speed, different accents, and not catching that connected speech we just talked about. What's the overall key to better listening?
I think the biggest mindset shift is moving away from trying to catch every single word. That's exhausting and often impossible. Focus instead on the main idea, the gist.
Listen for the big picture, not every tiny detail.
Exactly. It's okay not to understand everything. Use context to guess unfamiliar words. Listen for the stressed words that carry the core message. Practice both top-down listening, using background knowledge to predict, and bottom-up, focusing on sounds and words. Accept ambiguity.
Okay, except you won't get 100%. What about speed?
Gradual exposure. Start slower if you need to, use playback speed controls maybe, but aim for normal speed eventually. Listen to short chunks repeatedly that helps train your ear.
And accents.
Deliberately expose yourself to different ones. British, American, Australian, Indian, etc. Watch movies, listen to podcasts from various places, focus on the message, not just the accent differences.
Variety helps. And dealing with weak forms and connected speech.
Everything we just discussed in pronunciation applies directly here. Study them, listen for them, use transcripts. Knowing what happens in connected speech makes it easier to hear it. The main thing for listening is strategic focus on meaning, not just words.
Okay, strategic listening. Now for speaking stumbles. The guide mentions fear of mistakes, translating directly from L1, and lack of fluency or too much pausing. Let's start with that fear. It's a big one. How to get over it.
It really is huge.
Yeah.
The absolute key is that mindset shift we talked about earlier. Mistakes are not failure, they are learning. Everyone makes them. Everyone.
Gotta embrace the errors.
You have to. Focus on communication, not perfection. Did they understand you? Great, that's success. Start small, in low-pressure situations, maybe with a language partner, or just talking to yourself. Celebrate small wins, and honestly, the only way to get more confident speaking is to speak regularly.
Practice builds confidence. Makes sense. What about translating directly? Why is that a bad habit?
Because languages just aren't code versions of each other. They have different structures, different ways of putting ideas together, different idioms. Word-for-word translation often results in sentences that are grammatically wrong in English, sound really weird, or mean something completely different. The underlying logic is different. Thinking in English means leaving translation behind.
So how do you stop translating in your head and start thinking in English?
It's a conscious effort. Try to think simple thoughts directly in English. Learn vocabulary in chunks and phrases, not isolated words. Focus on understanding English sentence patterns. When you don't know a word, try to describe it in English. Circumlocution instead of reaching for the translation. The more you force yourself to operate within English, the more natural it becomes.
Describe around the word.
Okay.
And then fluency, speaking smoothly without tons of long pauses, how to improve that flow.
Practice, practice, practice. Regular speaking is non-negotiable. Learn common conversational phrases and fillers, things like, well, actually, let me see. Using these appropriately gives you thinking time without awkward silence.
Use fillers strategically.
Yes, and practice that circumlocution skill, talking around gaps, keeps you going. Don't feel you need complex sentences immediately. Start simple, build up. Recording yourself helps you hear where you pause too much. Fluency comes from habit and having strategies to keep talking.
Okay, consistent practice and useful phrases. Let's switch to writing woes. Punctuation errors, commas, apostrophes, sentence structure problems, run-ons, fragments, lack of flow, wrong style. Starting with punctuation, commas and apostrophes seem to cause chaos.
They really do, often because the rules are different from the learner's L1. Common comma errors, comma splices, joining two full sentences with just a comma, need a conjunction or semicolon, or missing commas after intros or in lists.
Right.
Apostrophe errors, confusing possessives with plurals, mixing up its possessive and its ishes, or you're there. Those homophones are killer.
So how to fix these?
Learn the basic English comma rules. When to use them, when not to. Memorize the difference between its, your, I, etc. Treat them as vocabulary items. Understand the two jobs of apostrophes, possession and contractions, and proofread specifically for punctuation. Grammar checkers help, but don't rely on them blindly. Understand why it's suggesting a change. Careful checking is key.
Okay, learn the rules. Memorize the tricky pairs. Proofread. What about sentence structure? Run-ons and fragments.
A run-on is basically two or more complete sentences squashed together without the right joining mechanism, like a period, semicolon, or comma plus conjunction, makes it breathless and hard to read.
Okay.
A fragment is the opposite, an incomplete piece, missing a subject or a verb or just not the full thought because I went home. Both make writing unclear. You need complete thoughts, properly connected. Reading your writing aloud often helps you hear where sentences run on too long or where they feel cut off. Complete sentences correctly joined are the foundation.
Read aloud to catch them. Good tip. And making writing flow. Cohesion and coherence.
This is about connecting ideas logically. Planning is vital. Outline your points before writing. Each paragraph should focus on one main idea, usually stated in a topic sentence at the start.
One paragraph, one idea.
Yes. And use transition words and phrases. Words like however, therefore, in addition, for example, next, finally, they act like signposts, guiding the reader smoothly from one idea to the next. Logical flow and clear connections are crucial.
Plan. Topic sentences. Transitions. Okay. Last writing woe. Inappropriate register or style. Using slang in formal writing, or being too stuffy in casual contexts.
Exactly. It's about matching your language to your audience and purpose. Are you writing an email to your boss or a text to a friend? The language needs to be different. Avoid slang and contractions in very formal writing. Pay attention to the style of things you read. How does a formal report sound different from a blog post? Awareness of context is key.
Match the style to the situation. Got it. Now into a more subtle area. Pragmatic puzzles. Using language appropriately in social contexts. Things like being too direct or indirect, or using the wrong formality level. Why is this tricky?
Because these rules are often unwritten and vary hugely between cultures. What's considered polite directness in one culture might feel blunt or rude in English-speaking contexts, or vice versa.
So you might offend without meaning to.
Easily. Learning how to soften requests, could you possibly? Or disagree politely, I see your point, but perhaps, is really important. Same with formality. Using hey in an email to a potential employer is just wrong. You need to gauge the situation. Observe native speakers, learn polite phrases, and when in doubt, lean towards being a bit more formal and polite. It's usually safer. Understanding social rules is part of fluency.
Observe, learn polite forms, err on the side of caution. What about misusing idioms or cultural references?
Well, that's another minefield. Idioms often have non-literal meanings. Using one slightly wrong can sound bizarre or unintentionally funny.
Like kick the bucket, meaning die, not literally kicking a pail.
Exactly. Learn them in context. Be sure you understand the exact meaning and situation before you try using them. Don't overuse them. And cultural references, jokes, historical nods, etc. can easily fall flat or be misunderstood if your audience doesn't share that background. If you hear one you don't get, just ask. Nuance comes from understanding culture too.
Okay, use idioms carefully. Ask about references. Moving towards the end now. Learning approach errors. How we learn matters too. What bad habits do learners fall into?
The guide lists several common ones, focusing only on grammar rules and not enough on actual communication practice, all four skills. Listening, speaking, reading, writing.
Just studying rules isn't enough.
Nope. Not getting enough exposure or practice, not making English part of daily life. Passive learning, just watching or listening without engaging. Taking notes, looking things up, summarizing.
Need to be active.
Yes, being afraid of feedback or avoiding it. You need feedback to improve. And setting unrealistic goals, getting impatient, and giving up. A balanced, active, feedback-welcoming, patient approach works best. How you learn is as important as what you learn.
Right, the approach matters. So bringing it all together, what are the big overarching strategies for effective error correction that the guide suggests?
It's a great summary. First, cultivate awareness. Pay attention to your own English. Notice your patterns.
Know thyself.
Second, embrace mistakes as data. Don't just fix them. Analyze why they happened. Third, prioritize. Focus on errors that really impact communication or ones you make frequently. Don't try to fix everything at once.
Focus your effort.
Fourth, seek clarification. Ask questions. Use dictionaries, grammar guides. Ask teachers or native speakers. Fifth, practice consciously. Make an effort to use the correct forms you've learned.
Deliberate practice.
Sixth, review regularly. Keep track of common errors and revisit them. Seventh, immerse yourself. Surround yourself with English. Eighth, focus on communication. Don't let fear of errors paralyze you. Just try. And finally, be patient and persistent. It's a marathon, not a sprint. A systematic, proactive approach is key.
Awareness, analysis, prioritizing, asking, practicing, reviewing, immersing, communicating, patience. That's a solid toolkit.
It really is. Covers all bases.
This has been incredibly helpful, really diving deep into these common mistakes. It just hammers home that point, doesn't it? Errors aren't just normal, they're like essential steps. Absolutely crucial. And like the learner's compass stresses, just knowing about these common issues, being aware, is a massive first step. Recognizing the patterns, knowing the strategies, it puts learners on much firmer ground.
Definitely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaway is those stumbles. Their progress, even when they feel frustrating. Keep that positive mindset. Keep practicing. Keep persisting.
Couldn't agree more.
And maybe building on that learner's compass idea,
Yeah.
think about which territory of error we discussed today really clicked with you. Which bit made you think, yeah, that's me.
Interesting thought.
Is it a particular verb tense tangle? A pronunciation point that always trips you up? Maybe identifying that specific area could be the next direction for your linguistic compass, something to explore a bit deeper on your own journey towards fluency.
That's a great way to frame it. Focusing your energy strategically on your personal challenges. Very empowering. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today. We really hope this chat has given everyone listening some useful insights and practical tools for their own English learning adventure.